Well, hello, everybody. Welcome in. I hope everyone is having an excellent day. My name is Kesley, and I am your Michaels instructor. Today, we're going to work on learning how to use your Siser machine. Now, I have the Juliet, and both of the machines work with the Leonardo software. So we're going to go ahead and go into the software and send some projects over. I thought we'd start off with a time appropriate card. Cards is one of the easiest things to get started with as you're learning, because it's the cost of goods are not that expensive if you make a mistake and you have to redo it. It's also quite forgiving. So something, maybe you didn't turn out the way you wanted it to, but you can use it for something else. So to get started, I have materials-wise, I have some cardstock and some adhesive. I'll be using, since we're working on paper, the light grip mat, and then we'll send it through our machine, and I'll talk about cut settings and everything like that. If you have questions along the way, please do not hesitate to ask. Your time is very valuable and very important. And I know if you're starting a new hobby or just getting started with a new machine, it can be a little daunting, and the fear of like making a mistake or something might paralyze you. So don't let that happen to you. If you got a new machine, I suggest you get it set up, you take it out of the box. It's really very simple. Once you've taken it out of the box, you just plug it in with the adapter cord. I use Bluetooth to send my designs over to my machine. If that is daunting for you, there's a cord in the box that you can use and send the details right over to your machine to cut. Your cutting, just sort of go over the anatomy of the cutter. You have your screen right here. There we go. You have your screen on the left side, and this is where you'll load your paper and your mats in. You don't have to use a mat if you're using vinyl or something with a carrier sheet on it. You'll just be able to put that in without using a mat. Since my first project is the cards, I don't want to lose any of the little pieces, so I'll be using my mat. Within the machine itself, you have the buttons on the screen here that will move your mat in and out of your machine. And where your blade sits, that is right where you're going to start cutting. So get comfortable with your blade. Make sure that your blade is seated in your cutter. It's got a little, I wish there was a way I could zoom in on it, but actually maybe there is. Felicia, give me 1 second. Let me see if I can zoom in a little bit onto the machine. There we go. How about that?
See, I told you was already set up.
There we go. I know. Who knew? So in your machine, you have your blade is right here. Let me just get that set, send them right here ahead. So this red piece right here is your blade, and it screws in. You can screw it in and out. So you'll start off with just the regular blade. It's a 45-degree blade, so it sits in your housing unit at a 45-degree. You'll notice that the blade is just barely visible. It just tips out just a hair, and that's all you need to cut. If you need to remove your blade, there's a little plunger piece on the top, and when you push that down, your blade expands down, and you can remove your blade that way. One thing to notice on your blade is it has a little ridge here on the carrier sheet here. The housing unit has a little ridge on the middle of it. What your machine has a little holder place here, and you have this little screw part. On the screw part, it has a clamp to it, and the clamp is curved, so it has it curves inside. When you put your carrier, your housing unit in your machine, you want to make sure that that ridge on the housing unit, so like there's the ridge right here, I want to make sure that ridge is underneath the curve of the clamp. So when I align that back up, I want to just hold that in place as I tighten my screw here. So that screw there, and I'm just using my fingers to tighten it. You don't need to use a screwdriver or anything like that. And it will just, until it's tight, Am I screwing it the right way? Yeah. Okay, so once that's screwed in, you're ready to go. The only time you'll need to change your blade is if you're using felt or something like that, and you need to use a deep cut blade. Other than that, your 45-degree blade, that is your everyday blade, and that's the one you're going to be using every day. Now, I'm going to tilt this a little bit forward since we're zoomed in. Let me tilt my machine just a little bit forward and show you the screen. So the screen here, it shows you how to move your material. Actually, the right and left moves your wheels here, and that's how you feed your material in your mat in. And then that's your up and down, your north and south. Your west and east moves the blade housing unit. So that just moves that across. If you're on the home screen, let's see if I can go back. So when you're on your home screen like this, I know it's a little difficult to see, got a glare. When you're ready to cut, you'll do cut settings, and then you can click on this top box here, and it will take you to the various cut settings. So all of your Siser material is already programmed into the machine. So it will automatically cut for you the right size. So by that, the right depth of your cut. So the cut settings and the force and the speed that you cut is already programmed into here. And then you have a screen where you can add your cut settings. So that's all that is. And that is really all you need to know as far as the machine itself goes to get started. The next thing you need to understand is the software, and that software is called Leonardo. So you want to go ahead and download the software. The software is free. You can upgrade and get more features with the upgrades and use the design library. But the great thing about Siser is they're just excited you're going to be cutting material and making things. So you have the ability to upload designs in the software if you'd like to. For the card, we're going to start with a design that is in the design library. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And we are going to get started in the Leonardo Design Library. Now, when you come in, let me go out. Let's go to the home screen here. When you come into the home screen, you'll notice that on this side of your screen, that's my left side, you have tutorials, inspiration, design library, material library, Siser cutter, and your page of your designs, and then the design icon. The design icon is where you get to basically the cutting mat. So I've already pulled up a design to work with here. I'm going to show you how to find a design to get started. So you'll notice that my canvas here, my mat, is completely blank. There's nothing on there. And what I want to do is add art to my design. So I can just go to the design library and do a search for items that I'd like to use. So one of the things I knew I wanted to do was to add an envelope so we could make a little card. So I just do a keyword search for envelope, and then the envelope styles that are available will pop up. So let's just grab one of these. Here's a cute one right here. This is a nice little red one. And so we'll open that design. So now there is my card. Now the lines on the card you can draw in. These are the score lines, so you know exactly where to score, or you can just remove those and cut the envelope out to get started. So I'm going to go ahead, and so that's your envelope, and then I have a card that I'm going to make out of it, but I just actually cut my card since excuse me, since my card was just a rectangle shape. I just used my paper trimmer and cut that out. You can certainly do that on your machine, and you can add rounded corners if you want, or a little scallop edge if you want. But since it was just a rectangle shape, I was like, oh, I'm just going to cut it on my paper trimmer. So my card size, I'm not going to worry about that. I'm just going to cut that out on my paper trimmer. But my cute little love design here on the card, I want to pull that in from the design library and then resize it so it'll fit on the front of the card. So this insert piece here, I'm going to use as my guide for how big my card will be. And then I'm just going to go back to the design library and select a new image to go onto the card. Now you can see there's over like 1,600 different images that you have access to work with that are just part of the program, and they're excellent to get started with. And then you can always add your own designs. But as you're getting started, you have lots of designs to get started and work with. So I'm just going to scroll through some of the love designs. I thought, with our Valentine's Day coming up soon, it might be fun to do a love kind of theme. So I click on the design and I see that it's got 3 to 4 layers of colors, and I'm going to open this design. Now I could cut this out of iron-on material and iron this onto a shirt, or make it for a tumbler or a mug, or really anything you'd like to make it to apply it to. To resize your design, all you need to do is grab a corner and resize it down. Now, one thing to notice is as you resize, if you grab the corner, the entire design changes size with you. With the properties panel open, you can see the width and the height down here at the bottom right of my screen. You can see that width and height of the image that's highlighted. If I wanted to just change it and make it narrower or taller, I could just click on one of the side pieces and adjust it that way. If I didn't want to do that, just adjust the height or the width, and I wanted to always adjust the height and the width, I would close that lock there on the right side, and this would allow me to change my design by the proportion. So if I just click it like that, I can just change that design by the proportion. Now that I have my card and my envelope designed, I'm ready to go in and make my card. So how do we do that? How do we get it started to cut? I'm not going to do the marker or the pen lines today, so I'm going to remove that from the canvas. When I send my design to cut, it will ask me how I want it to cut it. So do I want to cut everything that fits on my page? And the answer to that is yes. Or if I only wanted to cut, let's say, for example, I only wanted to cut the card, the envelope itself. So when I send the design, I would say selected artwork only. And now you can see it will only cut the card, the envelope. You call my card, sorry, the envelope. And then the next choice you have to make is, do you want to use the current location on the mat, or do you want to move the color layer to the origin, or keep the color layers relative to each other? So for this one, I'm going to say move each color layer to the origin. And again, I'm only working with one color. So when I send that over, what that means, the origin point is this bottom corner of the mat. And that's where your blade sits. So when you think about how your design is in the machine, this is the tip of your blade, and this is where your design goes. So think about the bottom of the mat as the top of your page. That makes sense. So let's just go ahead and cut out our card envelope, and all I have to choose is, am I using a mat? So I'll select cutting mat. Yes, I'm using the standard Siser cutting mat, and you can use, if you didn't have the Siser cutting mat, you could also use a generic mat. That's 12 by 12, or you can use a larger mat, the 12 by 24, if you're making larger designs. And then once you've selected your cutting mat, you can also determine if you're cutting your materials on a roll or on the mat. So since it's paper, we're cutting it on the mat. And then I'll use the standard blade in my Siser. So it's the 45-degree blade. And I already have my paper settings set up in the machine. So I'm going to use the cutter settings. If I didn't want to use the cutter settings, I would uncheck that box. And then here is where I could change the settings. So I know For this paper, I cut it at a speed of 10 and my force is 80. So I could adjust it right here. But I've saved those settings and they're on my machine ready to go. Then I just click send to cutter. And it asks me, are you sure you're ready to send it to the cutter? Because it will start cutting right away. And my answer is no, because I don't have my paper in my mat yet. So as we're looking at your mat, it'll have a protective sleeve. So you want to take the protective sleeve off of your mat, but save these. Don't throw these away. You'll want to put that on your mat to keep it sticky. If you lose your stickiness on your mat, I use little baby wipes and I just clean my mat off, and that helps bring the stickiness back on. If you completely lose the adhesive on your mat just from use and wear, I do not recommend you spray it with a spray adhesive, because those particles from the spray adhesive can gunk up your machine and then that voids your warranty. So I just recommend, when it's time and your mat has no more adhesive to it, then it's time to get a new mat. And I'm actually pretty close to needing a new mat here because I don't have too much sticky, but I have enough to get me going. So what I'm going to do is take my mat and I'll put my paper on my mat. So I'm using 12 by 12 paper. And this is just paper I got at Michael's. It's a medium weight paper. So it's not like a really heavy, thick cardstock. It's just a medium weight paper. And I'm putting that on my light grip mat. And then I want to make sure that that is going to stay on my mat completely. Now I usually have a little tool. I don't know where it is. It looks kind of like a lint roller, but it is just a paper roller, and that helps make sure that your paper is stuck down. If you don't have one of those, your Siser probably came with one of these, and you can just use this to make sure that your paper is adhered down onto it. Why is that important? Because you don't want your paper to slide around in your cutter, because then that will take it off. So we just want to make sure that that is all pressed down and ready to go. Once it's pressed down and ready to go, I'm ready to load it into my machine. Now to load it, you have this little gray strip right here, and you're going to put the mat to the right side or the left side of that strip, and you just have to gently hold it in place. And then using the north arrow, we're going to feed the mat into our trimmer. Let me make sure I don't have this in the way. Okay, so I'm just going to feed this in until my origin point, which is right here, lines up with my blade. So let me get on the side here, and I'm just going to feed and make sure I get lined up. Push my blade all the way over to the start point. And we're just going to roll this in. Now there's a clamp in the back that you can open the clamp, and then you can slide your page in and out that way too. But I like to use the little arrows here. So I've got that pretty much lined up with the blade, and I'm just going to push that over. Now, remember, you're lining it up with the tip of the blade. So not the edge of the housing or anything like that. It's just where that tip of your blade starts. That is your origin point. So if you had little pieces over here that you wanted to move around with, then you could start your origin point here and it would cut it that way. So the origin point is where your blade starts. And if you look, let's go back in and share my screen one more time. And we'll look back at this and I'll show you again where that origin point is. So on this, my origin point is right here on that bottom corner. So if I had my blade started here, that starts my origin point, and that would move my design completely to the right. So I just keep that in mind. That's your origin point. So I'm going to go ahead and say, yes, I'm ready to cut, and it will start to send it over. And here we go. It's going to cut that out for me. So the blade head moves around your paper. The mat slides in and out. You want to make sure that you always have enough space in the back of your machine for your mat to slide in and out. So on your first cuts, don't push it up against a wall. You want to make sure that you have that space behind it to move. And then once it's done the cut, it just stops for you. I was chatting, so you didn't notice how quiet that was. And then you're ready to just unload your paper, just like that. Now, all you have to do, I like to turn my mat over and remove my cardstock from my mat like that. And I have a beautiful cut envelope that we can assemble and put together, and it will look like this. So that's how easy it is to cut. Now, what if you're cutting something that has multiple layers and multiple colors? For the love sign here, for a little love, it uses 4 colors. I have a cream, a red, a hot pink, a light pink, and again, I'm just going to cut my mat out on my paper trimmer. So I could send each color on its own origin, and each color would go through and I'd load my mat each time, 4 different times of loading my mat. But as you get more experience, and as a beginner, that's how you learn how to do these things. But as you get more experience with your designs and using the software, you will be able to manipulate and move things around on your mat so that you can send it through one time. So I'm going to move this over here. And if I'm ready to send this over, I want to make sure I send the design and the select, let's say, don't want to do the selected artwork only. We're going to send this over and select artwork only, and we're going to move each color layer to the origin. So when I do that, that shows me that each of my colors is on a separate mat, and I'll put my paper on my mat and I'll send it through each time in that bottom left corner. But here's a time saver. You can separate out all of your different layers like this. So what you need to do that is you'll come to your design and you'll say ungroup. That removes each layer into its own individual layer. So here is my love layer. And just so you can see what it is, I get a darker color. That's going to be my white. And then I have my red there. We have the last color here. The middle color here. And there's a little piece that's missing on the middle. Oh, no, there it is right there. And then this piece here. We'll group all these little pieces back together so it stays together when I move it. So now I can move all of those different layers and cut them as I want. But when I still send it, because they're all different colors, when I send that design, it will send each one to the origin point again on a different layer. So that didn't really save me any time. But I want to show you when you separate them and you change the color of each piece. So each piece is the same color. Oops, where'd my other piece go? That's not it. Okay. When you have these different pieces, let's make sure it's. Okay, there it is. All right, so I have 2 layers underneath here, and they are supposed to be separated. I thought I had them. Guess I grouped them back together. Okay, so I'm gonna have to ungroup this. So I have my 4 layers are here. Now I have each layer. Let me just grab that one, this one, and this one. And if I move those over, there we go. Okay, so I have all 4 of my layers and I've converted them to one color so that when I send it over to the machine, it will cut all on one mat. So to change the colors of your elements, then you would just simply click on that element, go to the color tab here, and select the crimson or the same color on each of them. So this way, it will allow you to move every piece and cut it all on one mat at one time. Now, am I going to cut these all out of crimson? No, I'm not. I'm going to cut them all out of their own individual color. So we'll put that back here, and this is what I'm cutting. This is how I get it, so it will cut all on one mat. So I'm going to send my design. See, I've got my colors here, and I've already spaced them out so I know kind of where they're going to go on my mat. So I have that all set up there. So if we can go to my overhead, Felicia, I want to show then how I set up that my cutting mat to get all those different colors cut. So I have my hot pink color, my red color, my off-white, and then my pastel color here. And my card is there. So I've got all these 4 colors. Now, when you look at your cutting mat, think of it in quadrants of 6. So you're 6 inches down the middle and 6 inches up the side. And each one of these is its own space. So I have each of the 4 different layers, each in its own space in the 6 by 6 quadrant. Let me trim up my paper, and I think it'll make it more evident what I'm talking about. So I'll trim my paper down to be 6 by 6. If you want to, or a little bit smaller than 6 by 6, I really only need about 4 inches for each color. So we'll do 6 inches by 4 inches on each of these. And if you just want to drop in the chat what projects you're working on now, like what are you getting started with? What was your first project? Where are you having your struggles using your machine? Are you having any struggles? Maybe you're like, no, this is great. I'm loving it. So we'll go 4 inches here. And go 6 inches here. Okay, so now that I have all of my pieces are trimmed down into 4 by 6 sides, I know I need to place them onto my cutting mat in their retrospective spots. So the first, my love with the outline, let's look at this card here. I'll put the card here so you can see it. So this red part here is up in this upper quarter here. So on the 6 inch by 6 inch space, I'm going to put that red paper to match that cut. My cream paper is next to that. That's going to go right here. Okay. And then my hot pink color is on this side. And then my light pink color is right here. Okay. So I've got all 4 of my colors on one cutting mat. And we'll just pop those in. Let me share my screen again. So it goes red, white, hot pink, light pink. So if I share my screen again, you'll see that I'll double check my positioning. So my red, my white, my hot pink, and my light pink are all together. This is my origin point. So if I had put my red down at where the hot pink is, one of my background shadows would be cut out of that hot pink. So knowing that this is my origin point, I match my paper up where those positions are. Then I'm ready to send this to my cutter. So we're going to load this in, and knowing that, oh, sorry, we can go back to the overhead, I mean the front facing.
Give me a second, Kesley. My computer is not acting.
It's frozen like Texas, right?
Yes.
Okay, so I can load it in, and I know this is my origin point. That's where my blade's going to be. So I'll just open up my cover, and I will pop it in here. Now, there are so many fun things that you can create with your Siser. This is just one of them to kind of get you started, the cards. But you can create stickers with sticker paper. You can cut so many different materials. And that's one thing I do like about my Siser machine is I have a little bit more control with the blades and the pressure and the settings to cut out more materials than I can dream of. Just pop this in there. You gotta kind of get your eyeball in there and make sure you're lined up and you have your blade right at that tip point. And then once you're done there, you can just go in, and we're just going to cut this right out. I'm going to send this right to my cutter. I've got my my points there and everything, and I forgot to scrape down. So I hope my paper, see it's moving. Okay, so that's a good thing to have happen. I'm going to pause right there, and we are going to take this right out. Remember I said I didn't like really give it a good pressure down. So I'm just going to replace that. I have another little piece right here. I'll replace that down, and then I'll use my little wedge piece, and I'm just going to make sure these are all down. So we just want to make sure that those are all pushed on and are nice and tight. Like I mentioned, I've had this for about a year now, and I'm ready to probably replace my mat. So I have a fresh one. I probably should have replaced my mat at the beginning of the year. Just to get, it's always good to have a fresh mat. Okay, now I'm a little crooked because I'm coming at it from a weird angle, so let me fix this up a little bit. Okay, so got it there. Down, okay. Yep, so there's a little line here. I'm just making sure I'm all lined up. And then we'll just push that over to the edge there as our starting point. I love how precise you can get. It's like really just a little bit. Okay, so now we're going to send this over to the cutter again. Oh, I need to delete out what I had on there. Let's send this over. And we're ready to cut it. So as I mentioned, there's so many different materials you can cut with your machine, and you just want to do a little test cut every time you try a different material. I keep a little notebook of the different materials I cut and how they cut out, what my cut settings are and things like that. So that's always a great way to do that. If you go into your Michaels store, you'll see an aisle of color and designs. There's printed materials, there's puff materials, heat transfer vinyl that puffs up when it's heated. Super fun to use. You have heat HTV or iron-on, that's the heat transfer vinyl. And your main manufacturers in that aisle are the Siser, Silhouette, Cricut, and Make Market. And you can use all of those materials with your machine. You also have like adhesive vinyl, also known as pressure sensitive vinyl. And that is, that's like you put that on with a transfer sheet. So we're not ironing it on, it's just you apply it with pressure. So if we can go scoot back over to the overhead, I don't know if we can, Felicia, one more time. I can show, we're going to just assemble this card up really quickly. All right, so with my card, I'm just going to trim this out. And I think I did it, let's see. It was about 6 1/4 by 7 3/4. So I'm just going to trim that down. And again, like I said, if I wanted to do rounded corners on the edge or add a little ruffle on the bottom of it, I would definitely have done that on my cutter and cut that out. But as it is, I can just do this right here on this one. And then once you've cut it, you can find the middle of your design. So my middle is right here. And I like to use the back side of my weeding tool to put that in the notch there and do the scoring line right there. But I will show you another tool you can use to do your scoring. But if you just have a paper trimmer, that is a really easy way to score your design. And then you just fold it over, lining up your edges and your bottom here, and just fold that right over. Okay, so we've got that. That's going to be the base of our card. You move these pieces out of the way. And then we're just going to start building up our card from here. So on your mat, you'll notice everything kind of is stuck to your mat. I'm just going to remove some of the outside pieces here. And these I'm just pulling up from the top of my mat. And you can save these pieces if you have a scrap container that you keep your little pieces in. You can certainly place those in a scrap container and use these pieces for later. So we'll start off with the love first. And I'm going to go ahead and gently remove it from my mat. Now you can use a little knife like this tool to make sure it comes off nice and smoothly with all the little pieces that you need to remove. So see how easy that comes off, easily that comes off, and that's going to go on my card. So that will be the main focus on my card. If I want to, I can use either paper adhesive. So this is a dot of adhesive, and you just run that over your paper like that. Oops. And we're just gonna put that right down. There we go. Get all those little spots in there. So we'll put that right onto our card. And I'm doing it like a little bit of an angle. And then the next part we want to put down is this bottom one here. So we'll put that down. Use another piece of material. I'm going to make sure I flip this over the right way. Did I have this right way? Oops. Sorry, that's I already flipped it. So I'm going to put that on and turn it over so I make sure that I'm putting the adhesive on the right side. I'm just going to get it up. Now, if you were doing this with, say, heat transfer vinyl or something like that, you could, you would just put down one layer of material and do, I call it a kiss heat, where you just get it set enough so that you can remove the vinyl, the backing sheet of it, and then you can always add more pressure as you're going along. If you're interested in learning how to do that, the Michaels YouTube channel has so many different videos on using how to do heat transfer vinyl and make t-shirts and things like that. There's a lot of choices on there that you can get inspired by. But it's the same technique. So if you've mastered it with paper, and again, it's a low cost entry point as you're learning the paper, 25 cents, 50 cents a sheet versus a roll of vinyl. So I always say to people who are getting started, start off with paper, make your design in paper and make sure you understand how it comes off your mat, how to cut it. And then from there, you can expand your materials, what you're using. But paper is always a good starting point. Then I'm just going to use this Ultabond glue adhesive, and I'll put a little bit in each of these holes because I need to put my red pieces right in there. And this is a tool I got, gosh, I don't know how long I got it. It's from Silhouette. And on this end of it, because remember those gummy erasers you had when you were a kid in elementary school? It had gummy eraser in there, but it allows me to go over to my mat. Try to pick that up, right? It allows me to come over to my cutting mat and pick up whatever I need to pick up. So that little piece there, and that's going to go right in there. Okay, and then I'll pick up this little piece, and that pops right in there. And that is really all it is. So if you didn't have this fancy little holder for it, you could get that gummy eraser and just hold that in your hand. Look how easy that is for picking up your little pieces. It's called Pick Me Up, and it was by Silhouette, but I've had this literally for years. And you just have to, you can unscrew that and replace it. The gummy part of it, it's great. Okay, so then the last step is our envelope, and folding up our envelope. So this is where something like this may come in handy, where you have like your grid lines. Again, you can just do this on your paper trimmer, or you can do it if you drew out the lines, you can just follow those lines and fold along those lines. But what I like to do is take my paper and I'm going to just make my fold. I'm trying to decide which side I should start with. Let's start right here. So I use that, and these have little grooves all along. But basically you're going to go from this starting point here and just come down. So however you find your technique for folding your lines, that's what you're going to use. And I just like to use a little old school ruler here and go like that. So that one. Come over here and we'll score this one. And then we just go on and we'll score the bottom. And again, you don't have to do scoring lines. You can just fold it with your hands if you want to. Okay, and then our scoring line here goes from that point to that point, and we just, oops, guess what? I can't do that, can I? I need my little groove there. So I'll put that right in there. And I just line up the top and I go down. Again, this is a scoring board from Martha Stewart, and it is I don't even know how old this thing is, but we are memory makers. Makes different scoring boards, and it's a good investment. Like, it's something I've used all the time. I know Felicia's a crafter too, and I'm sure she uses her scoring board all the time. It's a great tool, and if you drew in the lines, it would be a little bit easier for you to follow along and make those scoring lines. But then we're just going to come in and we just follow our scoring lines and fold in our sides. And then this is where I bring in my big tape glider. And I just will put that a little adhesive on the side of each of these. Oops. Right there. And we just fold that part up. My card can slide right in. Now, if I'm mailing this card, I would probably put it in another little sleeve so that I can mail it easily. Slide in there, and then we just close our top. Put that top down first. That's 4. Yeah, so if you just put it in like a little clear card sleeve, if you're mailing it, or ask for your card to be hand stamped, so that when you mail it, it will go right. It'll get nice hand delivery, and it won't go through a machine, so it keeps it nice. Okay, so there's your first starting off project. Now, this class has been recorded, and you can go on Michael's YouTube channel and watch this and work it back and pause it as you go. I need to trim this down just a hair. Trim it watch the video and pause it so you can follow along and do each of the steps like I did, so that you can it's a great way to learn. Just do it, follow it, pause it, and go back and do it each time. Each of your little steps. So let me just trim a little bit off of this side. I just want that to fit in nice and smoothly. There we go. So now I've got my card, and I can address it or I can hand deliver it, whichever way you'd like to go. That's sweet. All right. So before we move on to the next project, I want to give you an opportunity to ask some Q&As. If you had any questions that popped up as we were going through that, please drop those into the Q&A. Otherwise, I'm going to move along, and we will, let's just put that there. The next project I'm going to show you all how to do is how to upload a design from an outside source. So if you like to just, go on Etsy and buy a design, you can use that in your Leonardo software. So if you didn't find what you wanted out of the designs that are in their library, you can upload your own. So you just would go to your source that you like to use, find your design and download it, or purchase it and download it. I use a site called Creative Fabrica to get a lot of my designs from, because they just have a huge library of designs. So that's where I get my designs from. And after we finish it, I'll share a link to that for you. And so I've gone ahead and I've picked a design out, and I've downloaded that design onto my desktop, and you have to extract the file. So if you don't know how to do that, you just have to extract your file, and then all we have to do is upload it into your Leonardo software. So I'm going to share my screen again. And if you're, thinking about questions, please do pop those in, because, we want to make sure you are getting everything you need out of this class. Okay, so let me delete that one. Now I can save this card. As you can see, it's got a name. Oh, am I sharing? I don't think I'm sharing yet.
It's sharing, but it's just a
blank screen.
Yeah.
Okay, let me just see. Let me try that again. Okay, I'm connected, so let's just try one more time. There we go. All right, I knew it would pop up there. Okay, so for this one, I picked out a design here that has, it's for a skinny tumbler, And I wanted to just do something pretty simple that would be easy to do. So what you're going to do is you would create a new screen. And then over on the file, you would say import. And when you're ready to import, you would go to the location of your file. So my location is in my downloads. I extracted it right into my downloads. So I just have all my files right here. And I think this is it. Yeah, this is the one. So if you do a PNG file, that will just bring in the image more for printing. So you want to make sure if you're cutting, you have the SVG file. So an SVG file has all the little points that you need to cut. So since I'm cutting this, I'm importing the SVG file. And this is the file. So I want to import it as editable artwork. So that gives me the chance, if it's got multiple layers, I can adjust those layers. You could also, with this being a simple black and white design, you could set that in as cut only. And then that's how it would import. But for this one, I'm going to go ahead and do editable artwork. So we'll apply that in. And that artwork appears on my screen, and I'm basically ready to cut it. So I want to, I'm going to go back to the one I've got it resized. So I'll show you how I size the design. So I've got it resized and it's ready to cut and it's ready to go. This design has a lot of parts and pieces in it. So I've already cut this design out, but I do want to show you how to cut out a design that's really easy to cut out. So let's just grab, I'll just come into the search button here and maybe we'll do a butterfly. So now you guys will be able to upload a design and cut it out and everything. So if you're just bringing in a design and you want to cut that design out, we're going to send this design. Now it shows as black, but let's say you want to cut it out of blue material or red material or something like that. So it doesn't, just because it shows as black doesn't mean you can't change your material color. You don't have to change the color of the design to what you are cutting out. If you wanted to, you could just grab this little circle and bring it up and you could see the different colors and things like that you can change it to. So let's just go ahead and do that. And I'm going to make it just a little bit bigger so it's a little easier to see. Okay. So then we just send our design over and we're just going to send all the artwork on the page and we'll start it off at the origin layer. Okay. So it's going to cut right there. Now, one thing I like to do on my cuts is I like to use a weed box. So over on the right side here, I can select auto weed box, and that puts the weeding box right around my design to be cut. Now I do have settings on my machine, so I can use the cutter settings, or I can change the cutting settings here. So I'm just going to go ahead this time. We'll use the cut settings on our device, and I'm going to say a force of 15 and a speed of 10. Okay, so let me stop share that. For this one, I do have a piece of, let me just go grab it. Sorry, I didn't have it behind the camera. We have a piece of smart material here, and smart material has a really stiff backing, so you can load this right into your machine without using the mat. So I'm just going to put this in my machine, and I'll be ready to cut. So this time I'm going to slide it in from the back so you can see. I pulled my lever down and I'm just going to slide it in from the back here. And we've got my origin point set up. So we'll set that up. Now, this time I want to do a test cut. So I'm going to zoom in again and we're going to show how to do that test cut. Because the test cut is really key for you as the user to make sure you're getting the right settings on your machine. Now, I do have it set up on my software to send. So I'm going to do, let's see. I want to do a test cut. So, I'm going to switch that over so I can just stay on the machine. So I'm going to use my cut settings. And I'm just going to change it over to a pressure sensitive vinyl. And I'll just start with glitter. So we're going to load that settings in. That's at a cut speed of 10 and a force of 10. And on this bottom corner here is a little t-shirt. And that is your test cut space. So I'm just going to do that test cut. And once it's cut, you're going to unload your paper a little bit. You don't have to take it all the way out, but you want to make sure, oops, let's see. You want to make sure that it actually cuts out what you've put in there. So this is my little test cut space. And did I get a nice clean cut? So I use my weeding tool and weed out the background. So pretty much, whoops, that came off. It's supposed to go like that. So it pretty much gave me a pretty good cut. I can go a little bit deeper, I think, with that cut and make it a little easier for myself to weed. So I'm going to change my force and up my force to about 15. I'm going to do a test cut. What I'm looking for is a nice clean cutout and no, that doesn't cut through my carrier sheet. So at this one, I find that. I'll just put my weeding tool in there. And we'll go ahead and pull that up. Okay, that came out really smooth. I think that's the perfect setting for me. So that's the setting I'm going to use. Now, for this one, I know when I send it over that little corner space down at the bottom there, oops, this space right here has already been cut out. So on my software, I want to move that butterfly over so that it doesn't go into the area that I have already tested a cut from. So now we'll just send that out and let that come on through. It's really just amazing, all of the different things that you can cut and work with. The possibilities are truly endless of what you can make from your own designs, and everything. I hope I didn't make this one too big. I think I could put it on this tumbler, but I may have made it too big. So let me go ahead and pull this out. Okay, so now it's all cut out. It's right here. It's hard to see a bit, but let's go ahead and we'll look at it at the overhead, and I'll show you how to weed this and then apply it to the tumbler. So we can slide back over to our overhead. I'm going to grab my weeding tool here, and we'll go ahead and start weeding this guy out. So you can see the weeding process is really fun. It's very cathartic to see how it comes out. So if this is my weeding here, and I've got my box around my design. So instead of trimming out my paper, I can just come on in here and weed out my design. Now, different material weeds a little bit differently and comes off of your mat a little bit differently. So just keep that in mind. This is the Cricut Smart material that I'm using here. The Siser Easy Weed is really fantastic. I love how that weeds right out. It's great. Now, if you ever have trouble seeing, where your cut lines are, you can kind of tilt it towards a light and get your little weeding tool here. We're going to clamp that underneath and just pop that up like that. Okay. So then you just would carry on and weed out your entire design. Now, I don't want to take all of our time in this workshop. In fact, I know we're coming up against the clock here to actually weed this through. If a little piece comes up and you don't want it to, you can just set it back down. Let me just grab, I'm going to grab, this is great. And I love this one, but I did get one prepared for the workshop, so we didn't have to do that part of it. So here I have this design here, and I've done the one I showed you before, and I've done most of the weeding out of this. And all you have to do is just grasp that little piece that's supposed to come out and you just pull it right off of your page. Okay, so you just keep working that off and you take that right off, and you want to weed the entire piece. Once you've removed all of the pieces that are supposed to be done weeding, you'll have something like this. Okay, the next step, once you've done all of your weeding, you want to grab a piece of transfer tape. Now, different materials require different types of transfer tape. Since this is just a black vinyl, I can just use this Make Market weeding transfer tape on top of this. If this were a glitter material or something like that, I would need to use a strong grip material to weed that off. Because if you're using glitter, you need a little transfer tape with a stronger grip on it. So I like to start and just give myself a little pushback here. So I have a little bit of my material exposed at the top edge, and then I will put that over what I am weeding. Now I love this because it has the grid lines on it, and you can make sure that you're lining up perfectly. So let me just get that. Because when you go to put it on your tumbler, you want to be able to use those grid lines to, you want to use your grid lines to line up your design on your tumbler. So I want to make sure I get that on there as best as I can. And I'm going to just kind of push it down with my finger there, and then I'll expose the rest of my transfer tape. And I like to have one hand on this side, and I'll push it down to the other side here. And as I go, I want to push it down a bit and make sure I don't have any wrinkles on my design. And the reason for it that I like to do that is because the fewer wrinkles you have on your transfer tape, the fewer wrinkles you'll get when you actually transfer your design. Wrinkles and bubbles on between your transfer tape and your design do not transfer over. So you don't have to do that, but I just like to have it that way for my own use. Okay, so once you've got it like that, then you want to use your fingers or your little wedge and work out any bubbles. If you have any big bubbles or wrinkles, you can just kind of come back and lift up your tape if you need to and work those down. That's them right there. I just want to work those down. Okay, so once you've got that all worked out, you want to grab your tumbler. So I have this steel tumbler here, and this is a great tumbler because you can either sublimate on it or you can use vinyl with it. Lots of options with these tumblers. You'll want to remove your packaging. Be careful with your weeding tool on this because you can scrape the steel, the white enamel off. So you just want to be very careful with that. That's funny, I've never had a problem. There you go. Okay. And the next step, once you've done that, is you want to use vinyl, and we're going alcohol, and we're going to clean our tumbler off to make sure there's no adhesive or fingers or anything like that on your tumbler. So I just use these little eyewear packets, and I just wipe this down. That removes any little lint that might be on there, any fingerprints that might be on there. Fingerprints aren't that big a deal with vinyl, but this is just a good habit to get into. So we're just going to move that all the way down, wipe it off. Now, one little tip I've learned over my time working with tumblers is the tops go on and off in a very specific way. So I do look at where my straw is sitting, and I note that that is my center. If you're doing like a sublimation project where you have to take the top off, I would note where the center of your design is, because when you put your top back on, the straw is always going to line up in the same spot. So that's just something to keep aware of. A design like this, we don't necessarily have a strong beginning or a strong end, so it can kind of go anywhere you want it to go. If you want to, just work with the middle of your design, what I like to do is I'll take off the paper off of half of my design. So to get your design off, we're just going to do like 45-degree angle, and you just roll the carrier sheet of your vinyl off of your design. You just want to kind of push that down and roll the carrier sheet back. It's like a real simple push and pull method. And if you get stuck in one spot, just kind of come at another angle and work your way down that way. It does help too. I don't know what I did with my little scraper tool, but that does help to run that on the back. And then I always like to hold that as I'm taking my carrier sheet off. Just kind of remove this off nice and slowly. You don't want to stretch your vinyl or anything. Again, if it's not working at one angle, just kind of come back at another angle. Eventually it will all come off, so don't panic. I think for time, I'm just going to go ahead and take this off the whole way. If you find you're getting frustrated with how it's coming off, if you're like, oh, I've got too much to work with, you can always peel or cut the carrier sheet and work with a less bit of the carrier sheet. So if you're having trouble, fold it and roll it. So you get to that spot where you're having trouble and just kind of give it a little fold and change direction. Don't get frustrated with it as you're working it off. So it does come off and it'll all come off. Just gonna have to find where it's hidden and peel it up. Right. Working our way. You do want to make sure it goes back down how it's supposed to, so you don't reposition it as you're removing the carrier sheet. You want to keep those positions where they are. And this is, I think this is just a Cricut permanent vinyl that I've cut on this one. There we go. Work your way across your design. All those little pieces, you want to make sure they all get down. So you can just kind of come back. And go down. So you see, I did that. I went on the back side and kind of pushed it down. And then you can use that to push along the vinyl as you're working it out. Sometimes if you're having a really hard time with this, you might want to do it up on a window so you can kind of see where your materials are and how they're coming off. So you can do that in front of a window if you need to. Okay, so now we have our tumbler. We've got a really nice design ready to go. Let's just take this. If you want to, again, you could start with one end and wrap it around. I kind of like to start with the middle. So I'll kind of get the idea of where my middle is. And let's go like that. Just kind of give it a little crease there and there. And then as I put it down, now I'm not going to put this all the way down to the very bottom because I don't want my little vinyl to, there's a little curve here. So I don't want my vinyl to have to curve around the bottom. So I'm going to go up a little bit to the tippy top there. And we're just going to set that down. Sort of like a fold here. All right, so there's our first step down. And then I'm just going to take my hand in there and work my hand on that side. Now, if I wanted to, I could have left some of that carrier sheet on the back of this so that it doesn't stick down until I'm ready for it to stick down. I'll keep working it that way. And then just hold it up and put it back. Now, I love this little stand. It makes it so easy to put it down. And then once you've got it down, we'll start removing it by peeling it off. So we're just going to do the reverse of what we did before. I'm just gonna make sure everything's down as you peel it off. I'm just gonna start here and get this moved out of the way. So I can bring back the other part of my design and bring that over, just like that. And once you've got it started, want this to stick together. Now we're just gonna take this right off and we'll have a beautiful tumbler. You don't need to put any kind of sealer on your vinyl. It's a permanent, your permanent vinyls are permanent vinyls. And as long as your tumblers, your cups can go through the dishwasher, you can put your design through the dishwasher as well. I usually recommend 24 hours before putting it in. So it kind of has a chance to cure and set onto the material itself, has a chance to sort of really stick to your base. I'm just getting this kind of pulled back from each side. We'll put it back in the little holder here. And your little holders and all of your tools are in the vinyl aisle where your machines are. All the little tools, this little holder is there. I love the holder. I used to use just, if you're just getting started, I used to use face cloths so that my tumbler didn't roll as I was taking the tape off. So now I can just kind of reposition it and roll it around as I need. See how beautiful that comes off? And if you wanted to add color to your design, you could cut it out and with a filler of a different color, maybe some greens, some yellows, you could really go crazy with all the different colors you could add. All right. Now, if you have more color, if you have more questions as they come up as you're working, feel free to reach out to me. I am on YouTube at Kesley.365. And my New Year's resolution was to post more videos. So if you have questions, you can, always ask me questions there. That's how you can find me. And I'm happy to help you as you're getting started. But on the Michael's YouTube channel are a lot of courses that will also walk you through what you're doing step by step. So here we go. Look how beautifully that turned out. I love it. I'm ready. I'm ready to have an afternoon drink here. Fill up my tumbler and make sure I hit my hydration goals. All right. Well, thank you all so much. And thank you for your patience. I really do appreciate it. I hope you have learned a lot about using your Siser Juliet and just getting started with it and jumping into a few of the different projects to get started and get comfortable. But the best thing you can do is take it out of the box, plug it in, and start playing. That you cannot harm it. Okay, great. Thanks so much, everyone. Have a wonderful week.